Matt, you have a grandbaby not too long, next month, right?
Yeah. We have a little baby grandbaby on the way. He's due middle of February. So we're pretty excited. This is going to be the first grandbaby for my wife and I. So yeah, we are super excited.
Exciting times.
Yeah.
Now, is it the first grandbaby on the other side of the family? No. Okay.
No, this is number 4 for them.
Okay.
But number one for us. Yeah.
My oldest was the first grandchild on both sides. You have never seen a child spoiled like that child.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Well, we're going to do our best.
Oh, yeah, you should.
Yeah, we're going to do our best to spoil them.
That's your job.
I mean, are you guys going to play in obviously, caveat is how much snow we get this weekend. We might all be working this weekend if we get 12 inches of snow. But
yeah, I remember that one in 2000. The year that snowed January 2000. That was like 19 inches or something.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
I remember it too. I had an absolute blast. It was great.
Do y'all make snow cream?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
We try.
Yeah. Yeah. That's okay. You have to.
See, normally we have the intent of making, and they're like, oh, we don't have all the ingredients or.
Oh, you got to get prepared.
Yeah, no.
You got several days.
Yeah, we'll get the bowl ready and put it out there on the back porch. Yeah.
But you're not supposed to eat the first snow, right? Do you believe in that?
Yeah.
It's already snowed here in the state of North Carolina, so that qualifies. Just not here.
That's right.
Well, fun fact, I've eaten snow cream for years, and
You're still here.
first one, second one, you know.
Look at you. You're still here.
Yeah.
You're doing great.
Doing great.
I don't know about great, but we're doing it.
Well, welcome back to Behind the Lines. This is actually our first episode of 2026. So,
nice.
yeah, right. Happy New Year to everyone. We're excited to be back with you, bring in just kind of stripping back some of the things that go on at the co-op. Excited to have 2 team members from our IT team here today. Eric Braxton, the Director of Cybersecurity and Operational Technologies, and Matt Gardner, the Director of Information Systems. Most people know the co-op and electric utilities for keeping the power on, getting it back on when it goes out. If there's 12 inches of snow, the restoration process behind it. But there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes, and the IT department is critical to that.
Yeah.
So today we're going to kind of dive into some conversations on what's going on in the cybersecurity and IT space, how it's helping us, some of the challenges and threats that are out there, how it's also just bigger than the electric utility industry, but kind of dive into some of those things. We're going to try a little new segment today too, the little myth versus facts. So Connie and I both have a couple myths that we're going to throw out there, and then give you guys a chance to respond with the fact behind it, because there's a lot of misinformation, but a lot of conflicting information out there on cybersecurity and AI. So,
Right.
First one, cyber attacks are rare.
That is false. They are not rare. They happen every day. We're fortunate enough here, we've not really experienced anything huge in that nature, but they're definitely prevalent. We hear about them all the time, not just in our space, but really in every sector. It's definitely on the rise, and that's just the nature of the beast right now. So.
All right. Myth number 2, phishing. And maybe you can elaborate as to what that is, but phishing isn't a big deal for energy companies.
Phishing is a big deal. And there's a couple different versions of phishing. We have phishing, if you imagine just somebody using a net, and they're just trying to throw it out there and catch whatever they can. Versus spear phishing, that's a direct targeted threat. And so that's where somebody will actively seek to come after me or you and try to compromise us in whatever tools they can to get us to do whatever they want us to do. So phishing is just, I'm just going to send out thousands of emails, versus spear phishing is we're targeting you as CEO of Central Electric or whatever.
So these type of attacks, one myth would be it rarely affects critical infrastructure. How do you feel about that?
I wish that were the case, but the reality is with critical infrastructure, like every one of them is going to have a target on them because it causes such disruption when there's any type of interruption with it. But yeah, it definitely impacts, and ransomware impacts it just as much as some of the other ones. So it's definitely a thing.
So AI, big topic. AI only helps the defenders in a cyber attack kind of area.
Well, in my opinion, AI is really can be a tool for attackers by creating emails and creating the temptation for folks to really think, oh, this is a valid email from UPS. One of the things they teach us is to look out for misspelling, right, or grammar, because somebody actually typed that in. With AI, they don't have to do that because that makes the tool much more effective. So we really have to be careful. I mean, the click-through rate is well over 50% when an AI tool generates that phishing campaign.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to figure out what's real, for sure.
But with that too, like it helps us also, like a lot of the tools and stuff that we use in our tool belt utilize AI and stuff. So it doesn't just help the defenders. I mean, it helps both sides. But they certainly leverage it as well. Yeah.
Cyber attacks aren't costly.
Yeah. No, they're very costly. And I think it depends on, like anything else, really the impact or the severity of it. If it's just a single device that's compromised, or if it's your whole entire company that's down. And some of those where your whole company's down, I mean, you're going to have all types of teams involved, third party, you've got legal folks, you've got your reputation with our members. So there's some things that you can throw a dollar amount on, and there's other intangibles that you can't really put a dollar amount with. But anywhere from, you see them a lot of times, they're in the millions of dollars, and so it's very costly.
But I will tell you, working at a cooperative is a lot different, because we have a lot of peers around the state and the region that if we put the call out, they would be here in a minute to help to help us out. So not only would we have the benefit of the tools that we have and the vendors that we have access to, but we also have our peers around the state, which we work with all the time. And so the collaboration amongst the IT departments throughout the state is, I think, second to none. So if something were to ever happen, we're here to help each other out, another cooperative principle.
And that goes on the preventative side too. We talk about disaster response.
Oh, absolutely.
But sharing resources, we started using this strategy. That the cooperative network, I mean, that's a great point.
Yeah.
It's so strong, and we all kind of work together. The co-op network, put that up against any network, right?
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
just the amount of professionals and the amount of information sharing it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the point of kind of leading off with that in that conversation was to show that cybersecurity space is critical. And, one thing, that space has changed a lot, maybe even just the last few years, but over the last decade. The IT space, cybersecurity space looks completely different. It used to be primarily a desktop support, because you were somewhat, isolated in a sense, but now everything's so interconnected and everything's dependent on it. So it looks completely different, and it's changed our industry and a lot of industries. And so particularly here at Central and just the electric grid, electric utilities, what are some of Eric, I'll start with you on this one. What are some of the top cyber threats facing utilities today, and how do they differ from other industries?
Yeah, so there's tons of them out there, but in the U.S. as a whole, like I think the the government has 16 different critical infrastructures that they've classified as a critical infrastructure, and one of them being energy. And you know, we work in the energy space. We don't generate anything, but we are an energy company. But one unique thing about energy, and I guess you could almost argue this with the other critical infrastructures, is that the other 15 critical infrastructures, they need energy, they need power. So naturally there's a big target on us already, because if they come after our critical infrastructure, energy, like, it has an impact on all the other ones. And then information technology is considered a critical infrastructure, telecommunications, and that's also a big part of our role too, on the IT side and the networking and communications piece. So there's 3 of the 16 critical infrastructures right there. So, you know, some of the threats, I mean, you've got nation states that are attacking not just Central Electric, but they're trying to go after any type of energy company, power company, really any of the critical infrastructures. But they're doing that for positioning, because it can create political unrest, especially, you know, in some of the times we got now with just geopolitics in general. But then, you know, aside from the nation state actors, cyber criminal organizations play a huge role. Ransomware, that's a huge one, and kind of the driver behind ransomware is just money.
And bragging rights.
Yeah, exactly.
They love bragging rights.
They don't necessarily care to, you know, that they're causing power outages or issues within the utility. They just want to know we're going to pay, and they know that utilities can't afford to be down for long periods of time, so some of them may pay. So that's something else that that we have to be wary of as well. Hacktivist groups, you don't hear a lot of it like you did at one point with groups like Anonymous and stuff, but they're more ideological driven. So like they're trying to send a message, really, and they're not really trying to cause issues, but they're just, you know, this is what we're capable of type thing. So it's not really just one type of attacker we're looking at. There's a huge gamut of things that we're trying to prepare for
and prevent.
Yeah.
One thing you mentioned, kind of like a domino effect too. So everything's dependent upon electricity. You know, you said that really well. Is that that's going to take down if the power goes out, you know, internet goes out.
Yeah.
And lots of different things are just a trickle down domino. So.
So based on that kind of national landscape of the electric grid and why people would kind of focus on that, let's dial it down a little bit to just us, Central Electric. So talk about what do we do? What are our like layered defenses, and what's the reality of how do we protect our system and our members' information? That's kind of a big question mark, I'm sure, for our members.
Yeah. One analogy, without like giving any open source intelligence and kind of telling what we are actually doing, is kind of think of it like your house as a layered approach. A lot of homes and neighborhoods don't have a fence around it, so think of that kind of as our perimeter. And that's going to keep a lot of people out. Just the fact that I have a fence there, they're not going to try to get in. But then if they get into my fence, you know, I've still got a house there. So we think of that as kind of the endpoint protection as your house. We've got doors and we've got windows, and we keep those locked and shut, and the only people who can have access to that house. So we look at the identity and access level. So if you've got a key to my house, or you have a combination to get into my house, you have access to get into the house. And then inside, you know, we've still got, like, we're secure in applications and stuff. So think of it almost like a safe in your house. Within that, you know, you've got another code and stuff. If you've got access to get into that, you've got access to that data or whatever. And then there's also people in the house. And so people, it was kind of the last line of defense. And that's where all of us come into play, that if all of our defenses fail, if you get past the perimeter fence, or if you get into the house past our endpoint protection, you know, we still have our people here. And so that's where a lot of the end user training that we do comes into play. A lot of the things that we talk about come into play. And if it just so happens that we have a huge tornado comes through and it knocks my fence down and my whole house down, then we've got a disaster recovery plan. And Matt can kind of go into that a bit as well.
Yeah, so we don't like to think about if our defenses fail, but we have to plan for it just in case, right? The military likes to use a term called right of boom, right? So if a situation happens, most of the time we're operating left of boom, but when a situation happens, now we are past that situation. So now what do we do then? So we implement a 3-2-1 strategy in our backup strategy, our disaster recovery and business continuity plans. We have workbooks in place to help us so that in the stress of the situation, we can go to those workbooks, what we call playbooks, so that we can make sure that we're not missing any steps and making sure that we bring back all the data properly. We use, like I said, the 3-2-1 strategy, and so you have 3 copies. 2 of those copies will be on different media, and then 1 off-site. So at all times, back in the old days when this gray beard wasn't so gray, we used we would do backup tapes. We would do tape backups, and then Iron Mountain would come on site and pick up and bring our old tapes to us, and then they would take the newer tapes and take those off-site for off-site storage. But now we have constant replication that happens all the time, and we have those to actually 2 different sites. So not only do we have one site, one off-site backup, we actually have 2 sites. So that provides us, even if one of our sites was to get compromised, the other site provides us what we call geographic diversity. So that way, tornado here in town can't really, or an event here in North Carolina can't really touch us. We can still get the data, which is the most important thing. And that's what the hackers ultimately want, so that they can compromise it and say, you got to pay. And that we try to do everything we can not to have to do that.
Yeah. So we briefly mentioned at the beginning the concept of mutual aid, one of our cooperative principles, where all these other co-ops are dealing with the same issues we are, and we work together. What would be how do other co-ops help each other out with regard to IT or cybersecurity, either in preventative or in disaster recovery? Like what would something like that look like? Like just learning from each other, or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's numerous conferences throughout the year all around the U.S. That are co-op focused, and there's some that are specifically tailored towards just cybersecurity. Then there's some engineering, operations, IT conferences. But on the cybersecurity side, there's a lot of breakout sessions. People are given, industry standards and best practices and lessons learned on things that they've encountered, and then what they've done, in hopes that we can take those back and implement them here to avoid going through some of the things that they've gone through. There's also co-op cyber goals, and they're pretty straightforward, but I mean that they're goals that you can go back to your co-op and implement with relative ease and not a huge cost associated with it. But we see ourselves as a big network, and it's not me versus you, and that's kind of the beauty of it all, with the cooperation among cooperatives, is that if something is going good at one co-op in North Carolina, we're going to tell the other co-ops
Absolutely.
about it.
Yeah.
And odds are they're going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's everybody's just helping each other out. It's great.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Strength in numbers.
Yep.
Sure. I mean, that
That's
network
exactly
is huge and strong. And shifting gears a little bit, not everyone has a Matt and Eric at home. So, we're talking about Central Electric and kind of what we're doing here in the industry and some of the challenges we face, but those challenges are beyond just business as well. Mm-hmm. When you go home, you carry on a much smaller scale, but you carry some of the same challenges home. So, the community and our members who are listening on this podcast, how, in today's world, when the threats have changed so much, it used to be someone coming and knocking on your door, and that now it's kind of turned into, it could be a text message, or you get a phone call where the voice is being replicated and it sounds like someone or it sounds like a public figure or someone, down to your home Wi-Fi network. So, we talked about our defenses, but how can that be taken home, and how do you apply that on a personal basis?
I know for me, what I try to tell my circle of folks is just slow down and think before you click. That's the first thing I tell people. Think before you click. Maybe just hover that mouse over top of that link or that button and see what it says, because it's going to pop up and show you something. Just hover over it and see if it actually looks like it really is going to FedEx.com or UPS.com, or if it's going to something that you're not sure of. And if it's that important, they'll reach out to you in another way, right? Whether they'll call you or send you a text, or send you a letter in the mail. So some other mechanisms that folks can use is using passphrases instead of passwords. Passphrases are so important, and they're easier to remember than a password that has a bunch of 16 characters that has uppercase and lowercase and stars and whatever. We encourage our folks here to use passphrases because a lot of systems can accommodate up to 256 characters. Some are limited, where they are like, well, we can only do 32 characters. So, maybe you just remember two words mushed together. But yeah, and then having a good password manager. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Having a good password manager at home?
Yeah, for sure. So password managers, it's really just, I guess for a home user, it would just be an app on your phone that you kind of store all of your passwords in. They're typically encrypted. And then in that case, you really just have one master password that you will need to remember. Mm-hmm. And then one of the beauties with the password manager is that you don't necessarily have to remember any of your passwords. And then 2, you can have unique passwords. So your bank password is not the same as your Netflix. It's not the same as your Amazon, and it's not the same one you're using at work.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, when a threat actor is doing what they call reconnaissance work, or they're trying to do some leg work to find out information about people, they'll go out and, they may compromise Netflix or something. I don't know. And then you may use the same email address and same password with your Netflix account as you do with your Central Electric account, which, we frown upon that. Let's throw that out there. But whenever they do that, it's something that they're going to try whenever they say, okay, James works at Central Electric. We're going to try those credentials we just harvested and see if it works there.
And that actually happened. You remember a few years ago when the gasoline crisis hit on the Eastern Seaboard, and they shut down all the gas pumps.
Yeah, the pipeline.
Or
Colonial Pipeline.
Colonial Pipeline. Yeah, it was an IT person's account that they had used on their personal side. They were using their work account for their personal stuff. That got compromised. And then somebody was able to VPN in, and then from there it was off to the races. So using different passwords, having that separation from work, right? So I have a personal email account, and then I have a work account, and I make sure that none of those passwords bleed over.
Yeah. And then 2, something else is simple, like if you buy a new router for your house, a new wireless router, like change the default credentials to those. A lot of those, they use the same default credentials across the board, and they're well known to folks. Change those passwords, like just keep your mobile device updated, and just be careful like sharing all your stuff out. Like, hey, I'm going to loan my credentials to my friends so they can watch my Netflix or whatever.
And I noticed like one thing the other day, we were talking about password keepers and different things that, I'm always cautioning my parents about different phishing campaigns or scams or other things. But, that's something you can share. They could set up their password keeper, but I could have access as,
Yes.
somebody who would then know and be able to help intervene. And that's another thing. You're not, instead of sharing by calling or printing things out or texting to each other, if you have access to a secure encrypted password keeper that you can share with a child or somebody that needs access, that's helpful.
The latest version of iPhone has that, where you can share.
Right.
Two or more people can collaborate on a couple of different devices.
Yeah.
And yet still have access to the same information, which is really great.
Yeah, super helpful.
You mentioned two things. One thing that you mentioned 250 characters.
Mm-hmm.
That's an old school tweet right there. A tweet as a passive.
Like a true communicator right there.
But one thing that I jot down too is we talked about, we did this exercise not too long ago at one of our team training, where you think about how many devices you have connected in your house. And the idea was just, we weren't talking specifically about this, but it was how things have changed so much over the last few years. And you sit down and you really think about it. I started adding it up. Like, I got to 20 in a hurry. I mean, talking about phones, iPads, TVs, or whatever it may be.
40 plus.
Yeah, I mean, you have, there are so many vulnerabilities and points that obviously are coming back to a Wi-Fi network, but how could someone kind of control all those vulnerabilities and make sure their Wi-Fi router, their device that's there, is secure? Because obviously you mentioned like the fence. It looks a little different here, but so what's the firewall to make sure that when you're at home that you're kind of protecting your data at home? Is there?
Yeah, it's tricky with some of those devices at home because they're what they're called just an IoT device or Internet of Things. But it's, you've got a security camera at home, or you've got your smart refrigerator, smart TV, a game console. A lot of it really is just keeping them up to date with, when you log in and it'll say, hey, your camera needs to update, or you need to update this game or this device or whatever. And it kind of seems like a nuisance because I don't want to spend 5 minutes and wait on it to happen, but it's there for a reason. So I think kind of taking the time and slowing down and making sure you're doing that, changing some of those default credentials, especially like on your router or whatnot. They're small things, but I mean, they make a big difference at the end of the day.
They all add up. Because in the end, I think criminals are lazy. They really are. And they're just going to go on. If they can't get into you within a few minutes, they're going to move on. That's the way that's my
smart,
opinion.
yeah.
Now, if they really want to target you, they're going to target you. And that gets back to spear phishing,
Right.
what we talked about initially.
So kind of using that same idea, we talked about briefly AI, and it's making things a little more complicated because bad actors are using AI to make the phishing emails look more authentic and all of that. But how is it helping us? It's definitely raising the bar for everybody. But how is it helping us work smarter? Without getting into too much detail about maybe internal workflows, or how are we using it in member service or grid operations? How does it make our life easier, more secure, et cetera?
Yeah, so I think it definitely makes our day-to-day easier. So a lot of the applications that we're using as part of our kind of layered defense and cybersecurity, they've already got built-in AI and stuff there. So it knows what our normal day looks like, and then it can just as easily, using some of those analytics and stuff, it can pull out any type of anomaly like this does not look right, and it raises red flags and it shoots out alerts and stuff to us. And a lot of those are just, they're AI, or, a few years ago we called it machine learning, or, so it's kind of rebranded along the way. But AI has kind of been around for a while. I know if I'm shooting an email out and I read it and I'm like, that doesn't sound great, and I drop it in, take a few things out, and I'll let a generative AI, make it sound a little bit better. So that's helpful as well. Whenever you're looking at predictive maintenance or like trying to predict outages and stuff, it's a form of AI. So I think a lot of the tools that we use are utilizing AI and we don't even know it.
I saw a statistic just today about, I think in a general day, most people would encounter AI probably 20 times without even really realizing it through their GPS or, just different things that they just don't even think about.
Yeah.
But what are some things that might, that a member might notice that has maybe made their life a little easier? I was thinking about maybe like the high energy usage. That would be one of those things where it noticed an anomaly or something like that. I mean, I think that's a benefit to the member for us. And I know there are situations where we reach out to them. We'll make a phone call and say, hey, we noticed this kind of spike that's unusual in your usage. Is something going on? And we've had situations where they're like, we don't know what's going on. And so somebody will come out and find a problem and they can solve it, which is, I think, a huge benefit to our members. So I think that there are opportunities that exist now, but they're just going to continue to grow. I mean, I would think so. But it's obviously, it's a tool, just like anything else that we use, and we have to think about it as such. It's not a silver bullet in either, but it's just another thing that we can use to make our processes more efficient, but also our members' experiences better.
Yeah. And at this point, like, you just have to embrace it because it's not going anywhere. Everything is heading in that direction.
Yeah.
You talk about how many times I probably use Google 20 times a day at a minimum. So, I mean, that's an AI tool right there.
Yeah.
They're everywhere you look. Just to kind of bring us full circle now and to start to bring everything to a close. First, thank you both for being here, sharing your insight, your expertise, not only on the co-op and industry side, but I mean, just real stuff that can be used at home is critical. The big thing is it's everywhere for good and bad. It's being used by the good guys like you, but then it's also being used by the bad guys. And so it's changed a lot. It's going to continue to change. And the big thing is, I think, Eric, I think you mentioned it, just if you're ever unsure, and I think you mentioned it too, like when you're hovering over an email, stop, think, and if it's too good to be true, probably is, right? And so if someone's, offering a lot of money or getting you to act really quickly, just probably need to stop and think. And that comes back to the co-op too, something we've dealt with for a really long time, but people impersonating the co-op, calling and trying to get you to feel like your power is going to be cut off within the next hour. Always stop and think, call us, call our member service reps. We are always available to look into anything. I think the big thing that goes not just for Central Electric, but if anywhere, if you are unsure, stop and think about it and call the source, right?
Exactly.
So that's always something to keep in mind. And as we look forward, there's a lot of great things still on the horizon with AI and IT, and I think we have the best IT team out there. You guys are fantastic. So thanks again for coming in and chatting with us.
I do think before we close, I just want to say, I feel like from a member's perspective, they should feel really good about their information and the work that we do here, and that they are very well protected. So I think we do a good job here, but also we're part of that network. And so I think we can give a lot of reassurance to folks for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for coming in. Sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. Until next time, signing off from Behind the Lines.